This Chatterbait modification has been around for a while, but it seems to be getting a resurgence in popularity again. I had never tried it, so I wanted to take a look underwater and find out what is really going on. Is there a big difference between this and a skirted chatterbait, or just why do some anglers really love this? Well, I will say, in my first few minutes of fishing with it, I drew a nice strike from a bass in a weed bed. It hit when the jig popped free of the grass, and you can see my horrible rod positioning when the strike came, which led to a lost fish. I needed to let it have a second and reel down a bit before setting the hook. You'd think I would learn. Well, anyway, to make this modification, I used a 3.5-inch Pro Model tube and cut off a little piece of a stick worm to slip it into the top to make a solid head. This makes for a great place for the hook keeper to hold the plastic, and it did work really well. Now, some tubes, like a 4.5-inch flipping tube, will have a solid head up there in the top. But if the tube that you use has a complete hollow body, this worked much, much better than I thought that it would. And of course, I have taken the skirt off of this Thunder Cricket. And really, after trying this for the first time, I think the better way to look at this is to approach it like you are fishing a tube with a blade modification instead of a bladed jig with a tube trailer. And I hope that makes sense. The first thing that you notice is that the tube offers a more slender profile than a bladed jig with the skirt, so that is important to keep in mind. Are you wanting a bulkier offering or a more slender version? And if you have lots of minnows or small shad, the Chattertube may be worth a go for you. And I will say the tentacles of the tube on the straight swim and twitch do look really good. But I've been a big fan of swimming a tube for a long time. But unlike the traditional swimming tube with an insert jig head, the pulse of the blade definitely adds a lot more life to the tentacles, as you can see here. And of course, being a tube body style, you get that nice bubble trail on the drop. Now, I don't know if those bubbles make all that much difference in attracting the bass, but it's definitely a confidence thing for me. I think it looks very lifelike when that happens, which is another reason I love using tubes. But like I said, it may or may not make a difference. But here's how I love to fish bladed jigs. I like to hop them on the bottom and just have that blade pulse for a split second. I've always really liked using baits that are more silent, and I once again just have a lot of confidence in fishing a bladed jig this way. It literally is just like popping a tube off the bottom, but with the added pulsing of the blade for just a brief moment on each hop. In some dirtiest water situations, this may be a better way to fish a tube than without the blade. Now, the old school tube doesn't get as much attention as it should anymore, and of course there are still avid tube anglers, but after experimenting with the Chattertube, I can definitely say I think it would be a good addition to a tube angler's lineup. But is there a huge difference if you look at it as just a bladed jig with a different trailer? It's interesting to approach it with those two different mindsets, and if you have used the Chattertube, let us know how you feel about it down below. And hey, if you would like to watch a video that talks about bass when they get in groups, or are they schools, and what is really going on, why do they get in those groups, go ahead and check this video out right here, and make sure that you go ahead and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.